We, the National Football League, believe Black Lives Matter.
NFL race norming, because I think it's important that people know that the NFL has been doing this for quite a while now. The NFL has been using a system that really does a great disservice to the players who spent years playing in the NFL without being aware of the not even the potential, the inevitable side effects of the sport, which come in the way of countless joint and muscle injuries, as well as some brain damage that will eventually and inevitably affect the player's life. There is no other way around this. Like, there is no other explanation, or rather there is no other eventuality for people who play football. It's all just dependent on the varying degree in which you will deal with certain symptoms. It is a matter of time for everyone who has played football at any extended length of time. I think that's just a fact of the matter. If you've been playing football since you were a Pop Warner cat, then it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. If you played football in middle school, probably sooner rather than later. If you started playing in high school, you might have pushed it off a decade or so. But it doesn't really matter. The eventual denigration of your or degradation of your noggin, your noodle, is going to inevitably change your life and change the way that you are able to live, change your quality of life, and eventually it'll kill you. It's a degenerative brain disease. But let's take a look at this video. And this didn't get a whole lot of traction like I thought it would when it actually hit the airwaves. It didn't get a lot of traction. Let's take a look at this video. It gives us more information that kind of lays out this entire race norming situation.
Former defensive lineman Kevin Henry played 8 seasons for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Stop by Kevin Henry.
Now, he says he's battling memory loss, headaches, depression, and bouts of anger. All symptoms of what he suspects are the long-term effects of the head injuries he sustained on the field.
Ooh, head on. He ain't lying. Head on.
Football doesn't give you an expiration date. You just expire. I've had 10 concussions or more. I've had at least 17 surgeries. 17. And I'm still getting them.
In 2017, a neurologist determined that Henry was suffering from a cognitive decline consistent with mild dementia. So Henry submitted a claim to the landmark 2013 NFL Concussion Settlement Program, which paid eligible former players suffering from the effects of head injuries.
What was the result of the claim you filed?
I was denied. And we're asked to function in our daily lives like normal human beings.
In its
And, just kind of piggybacking that entire scenario here is that, okay, so there's a process you go through. Once you, and this kind of started when they had the settlement for the NFL concussion situation. They had a process that you have to go through. You have to go through a process where you go and see different, they're supposed to be third party doctors who look at you. You go through a battery of tests, and they try to basically decide what level of cognitive alteration that you have now, and where it could go to. And for a lot of guys, being in getting into the concussion settlement program is actually something that is set to the time when you played football. So they actually set a deadline that if you hadn't played between, or if you played between this date and that date, then you weren't you were eligible. But if you played after a certain date, you aren't eligible. So basically, players who are playing now in the NFL are not eligible to be a part of this situation with concussions, with the concussion settlement after they retire, which really doesn't make much sense because they're all still playing football. They're all still getting hits. You've seen a spike in concussions per year in the NFL since like 2017, 2016. There's been a spike. So players are actually getting hit harder, getting hit and are being affected more quickly, it's being reported more in football now as compared to back then. Now, I know back then, for me at least, I know a lot of times, used to see a player get hurt, get a concussion. I mean, this was back when I used to watch football on TV. You see a guy get a concussion, and a concussion usually was a week, and then they're back. That was always kind of the norm. 7 days, they miss a game, and they come back. And you touch Troy Aikman, he's got a concussion. Steve Young was one of the toughest quarterbacks to play in the NFL. My favorite quarterback, actually. And even he started becoming highly susceptible and started having concussions. I think we all remember the Monday night game when he got knocked unconscious against the Arizona Cardinals. And he was like laid out on the field for maybe 10 minutes. They went to commercial break. He was out cold on the field. They had a zoomed in shot of Steve Young's face in his face mask, eyes shut, and he's just laying there. He looked like he was dead. Well, he was out for a week, and he came back the next missed one game and came back. It's been right in front of our faces for the very longest time as far as the football world and as far as the powers in the football world are concerned. It's been right there in our face that, you can't think that the human brain is going to be able to take the kind of punishment that it takes when you collide at at the speed of two cars running into each other at 25, 30 miles an hour every single play, 60 plays a game. Then you count the practices. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of plays in practice. These are things that they all count. Every head knock, it counts. The subconcussive hits do more damage than the actual obliterations that knock people out. So over time, if you pay attention to the different symptoms that a lot of players have, I've had some of them before, but these are things that every player is going to be affected by in the NFL. So when you get into this process, for me, I'm actually not allowed to go for a concussion settlement. I'm not allowed to because I played in the year, I played past July 14th or July 19th, 2014, I think it was. Because I signed with the Cowboys and I was with the Cowboys in the preseason. And because I was with the Cowboys, I'm not allowed to take part in the concussion settlement. So I can't get a concussion settlement. Does that make any sense?
Of Henry's claim, the claims administrator questioned whether his performance on the test was valid and asserted that the doctor used inappropriate norms. 2 years later, Henry went in for another evaluation with a neuropsychologist. Now, this clinician used an NFL-recommended formula that took into account age, gender, education, and race, and concluded that Henry did not qualify for compensation.
How did you react when you learned that there was a different standard being used for black players to get benefits as compared to white players?
I felt so betrayed, and I still feel that way. Two different systems? How can that be okay? Why should that be okay?
It's a controversial practice commonly known as race norming. In medicine, it's supposed to help doctors make better diagnoses by using race to make assumptions about a patient's background. But critics say it is not an accurate tool and has no place in the settlement program.
Well, the effect of using this race norm for the NFL is that it drastically limits the amount of damages they're going to have to pay out. It's almost the classic definition of racial discrimination. legislation using race as a basis of denying benefits to a disadvantaged or subordinated group because of race.
And I think that's another, these are dead on points. And I mean, we're not going to watch the whole video here, but you gotta understand some of the basics that go along with this. I mean, the NFL is trying anything it can not to pay money out. They don't want to pay money. And I mean, let's be real. I think the concussion settlement ended up being it was supposed to be for $1 billion, but it ended up being like $750 million, I think it was, that they ended up settling. So it's like they've already made their money back 30 times over, for 10 years since they decided on this concussion settlement thing. So there's no real reason that they should be using these type of techniques to actually, decide to not pay people for the same actual work. Like they're paying in a different way for one side as they are to the other side for the same exact work that both sides have done. Now, what's the key factor in even that is that, even more so than that, is that the NFL is what? 70% African American. So you have 70% black people, 70% of your players in the NFL are black. 100% of them are going to deal with these concussion issues, and if you're going to have to pay out money for these litany of people who played in the past, where that percentage of African American athletes is still at 70+%, well, you're going to pay less if you use race norming strategies to try and lock guys out from getting paid money. I think that right there on this is a good spot to kind of stop, because now, today, hit the news wire that the NFL is going to halt race norming and review black claims in $1 billion concussion settlement. And this is huge. This is really huge for the players. This is huge for the guys who have already gone through this process. I have teammates who have gone through this process and had been denied. And I had guys who had also been through the process just to get their basic line of duty benefits, which is the same thing as this, except it's more all-encompassing. It's more about the whole body, the accumulative amount of damage that you have in your joints, in your bones, all of these different parts of your body that are affected by it. They set you up, set you up with a point system, and they actually give you a rating in that point system. And depending on what your rating is, you get, X amount of dollars each month as a benefit. So really, there are some decent enough benefit programs in the NFL for players post-career, but the ones that matter the most are not nearly up to snuff. The healthcare is not up to snuff. They only give it to you for 5 years. Then you got to buy your own, and it's far less comprehensive as theirs with the NFL is, because the NFL's post-career insurance covers everything 100%. You don't pay for anything. You don't pay for anything. It's pretty much, it's free. I mean, you'll pay, if I had to get a, let's say a $300 prescription, like it would end up being like $20. So there's actually like a benefit there. Like you're not paying out the ass. But as far as the race norming, the NFL is going to halt that and review black claims. I'm going to go through this article, try and get through it quickly here, but I'll give you my thoughts as we go. NFL on Wednesday pledged to halt the use of race norming, which assumed black players started out with lower cognitive functioning. I mean, that is just, where does the notion that two humans who are the same but have different pigmentation, where's the notion that one starts off just normally dumber than the other? Where does that come from? That's where I would love to know where that comes from. NFL on Wednesday pledged to halt the use of race norming, which assumed black players started out with lower cognitive functioning in the $1 billion settlement of brain injury claims, and to review past scores for any potential race bias. They'll find a lot. The practice had made it harder for black players to show a deficit in quality for an award. The standards were designed in medicine in the 1990s in hopes of offering more appropriate treatment to dementia patients, but critics faulted the way they were used to assess legal damages in the NFL case. Wednesday's announcement comes after a pair of black players filed a civil lawsuit over the practice. Medical experts raised concerns, and a group of NFL families last month dropped 50,000 petitions at the federal courthouse in Philadelphia, where the lawsuit had been thrown out by the judge overseeing the settlement. And, you know, that just kind of goes to show how the system is really fucked when it comes to, you know, dealing with these problems that are caused by entertainment sports services. Like, football is an entertainment business. It's sport. If you go across the board, and I really, and man, you know, having known a number of NBA players and having had a cousin who was 6th overall pick in 2006, it's amazing to me how well, when you compare all of these sports leagues, the only one that actually does right by their players when it comes to their post-career benefits and, you know, just overall quality of life, the NBA does better than everybody. I'm friends with Jason Terry. Jason Terry me and him have talked about it numerous times, and he laughs at the NFL's system. He says, yeah, y'all, they don't give a fuck about y'all. That's basically what he said. And when they brought the case to court, it was thrown out by the judge who was looking out for the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, you can't even have a redress to the actual system of government that is supposed to be holding these settlements up to a standard that makes it equal for everybody who participates to try and be treated fairly. They literally threw out the lawsuit that said, hey, this is what they're doing. It makes it unfair. Help us out. No. That's what they do every time. No. Senior U.S. District Judge Anita B. Brody later took the unusual step of asking for a report on the issue. Black retirees hope it will include a breakdown of the nearly $800 million in payouts so far by race. They fear the data will never come to light. Words are cheap. Let's see what they do, said former Washington running back Ken Jenkins, whose wife Amy Lewis led the petition drive on behalf of NFL friends struggling with cognitive problems. Jenkins, an insurance executive, has so far not had such problems. According to the NFL, a panel of neuropsychologists formed recently to propose a new testing regimen to the court includes 2 female and 3 black doctors. The replacement norms will be applied prospectively and retrospectively for those players who otherwise would have qualified for an award, but for the application of race-based norms. The NFL said in a statement issued Wednesday by spokesman Brian McCarthy. Lead players lawyer Christopher Seeger, who negotiated the 2013 contract with the NFL, said earlier this year that he had not seen any evidence of racial bias in the administration of the settlement fund. He amended those remarks Wednesday, apologizing for any pain the program has caused. Okay, see, this is where motherfuckers be getting themselves in trouble. He's the one, this guy, Christopher Seeger, he's the guy who actually set up this entire deal. And he said he hadn't seen any evidence of racial bias. That was how it started. And now how it's going is, I'm sorry for the pain this episode has caused black former players and their families. Ultimately, this settlement only works if former players believe in it. And my goal is to regain their trust and ensure the NFL is fully held to account. Yeah, I'm going to blame the NFL because I set up the deal and I knew exactly how they were going to be doing these things. And I said nothing. And when I was asked, I said there was no evidence of any such things going on. But then the NFL came out and said, yes, we've been doing that. Well, cover blown. The NFL noted that the norms were developed in medicine to stop bias in testing, not perpetuate it. Yes, we see how that works. Both Seeger and the NFL say practices were never mandatory, but was left up to the discretion of doctors taking part in the program. However, the NFL appealed some claims filed by black players if their scores were not adjusted for race. Look at the hypocrisy in the talking. Look at the literal double talk. that we have going on here. This is mind-boggling. I mean, it says here, the NFL noted that the norms were developed in medicine to stop bias in testing, not perpetuate it. They said the practice was never mandatory, but was left up to the discretion of doctors taking part in the program. However, the NFL appealed some claims filed by black players if their scores weren't adjusted for race. This does not square shit. This does not square with this. It doesn't square. You literally said this, it was developed not to stop bias, not perpetuate it. I didn't see any evidence of any bias in any of these studies. But we did definitely appeal some motherfuckers getting paid because they didn't put in the race bias stuff in there. So we ain't got to appeal that. We ain't trying to give you no more money. This is, I mean, look, you know, and I don't want to get preachy in here. I really don't want to get preachy. And I don't want to tell people, I'm not trying to blame anybody in particular, because to me, it's not blaming someone. It's that the system itself in the NFL is the NFL is the biggest sports entity on the planet. I know they make more money than everybody in the world as far as sports goes. But when you hear people talk about the system, when you hear people talk about it's baked in the system, when you hear people talk about that, this is what it is. This is exactly what they're talking about. When they talk about it's baked in our justice system, it's baked into our real estate system, it's baked into fill in the blank system, the institutions, it's baked into it. The NFL is an institution and a major part of the U.S. economy. There'll be problems for every city that an NFL team is in if the NFL ceased to exist tomorrow. Big problems. It's baked into their system. And when you ask them more than one question on it, they can't hide it. When you ask them more than one question on it, it shows that it's baked in because they have to dance around themselves to be able to actually respond. The NFL came out, and if I go back to this, shit.
In a statement to ABC News, the NFL calls the lawsuit entirely misguided. The league says that the race norming, part of what they call demographic correction, is recommended but not required. And the concussion settlement was agreed to by all parties with the assistance of expert neuropsychological clinicians. And it relies on widely accepted and long established testing and scoring methods.
Disingenuous, like purposefully disingenuous bullshit. Because they say, well, you agreed to it. After they say, this is completely misguided. This is, they're giving you all of this filler talk. This is called a word salad. This was a word salad. It's all based on demographic correction, not required, or not recommended, but not required. It's agreed to by all parties with the assistance of expert psychological clinicians. It's widely accepted, long established. Let's not forget here, people. It's widely accepted and it's long established stuff here. This is not us being racist. But think about this for a second. In February, this is everything that they said. And when you fast forward to June, all of those lies begin to unravel. All of it begins to unravel. They sit here and say that it's all recommended, but it's not required. Yet they appealed some claims filed by black players if their scores weren't adjusted for race. So, it's like, monkey see, monkey do, but do as I say, not as I do. So they want you to believe what they're saying, but when you look right behind what they're saying, they literally are doing the 180-degree polar opposite. And that's why I see it across the board in sports all the time. I see it across the board. They don't, these sports conglomerates do not give a fuck about the players' well-being once they're no longer useful. They don't care. And they will do anything they can to minimize the effect on their bottom line by these players who are no longer playing, and they will try to get them out of the hair of that league officially and legally as soon as possible.